Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Anime Figure Archive. This is a brand new video format from us. We've been talking about it for years and it's finally here. I'm calling this the pilot episode because it's going to be broken into two parts. The first half, we're going to talk about the format itself, why we're doing it, and most importantly, get feedback from you all. And in the second half of this video, we're going to do an actual episode of Anime Figure Archive. So if you're here from the future and you just want to see the episode, check the chapters below. For those new here, I'm Senpai, and together with my Kohai, we specialize in in-depth anime figure reviews. If you like that kind of content, please check out our homepage where we have everything neatly organized, and consider subscribing. Officially, welcome to Anime Figure Archive. You'll also hear us abbreviated as AFA, so welcome to episode 0 of AFA. The goal is to be a sub 5-minute short-form review of any figure from our collection, as well as maybe new figures that we just got that we don't have time to do a long-form review of. Don't worry, AFA is not going to replace our long-form Kohai's collection review. Those are our bread and butter, and those are what we enjoy the most. The issue, especially as they're getting more complicated with more figures per video, we're averaging between 30 to 35 hours now of production just to produce one of those reviews. And since Kohai and I both have full-time jobs, it's about a week-long process where we start on our days off and then work on it consistently throughout the week after work. So realistically, we can only really produce a single episode a month of a Kohai's collection review. So the goal of AFA is to supplement the weeks where we do not have a Kohai's collection review or an in-depth discussion, with the ultimate goal of being able to produce at least one video a week on this channel, which we think is going to be very important for our growth here on YouTube, especially since YouTube doesn't like to push us due to the 18+ content we have. So in order to grow at a faster pace, we're just going to have to put out more content. In terms of production, with this format I've created here, the goal is to create an AFA video in under 3 hours of production, which is a significant change in total time. This means that I could come home from work and knock out an episode of AFA. If we need to go on vacation in a single day, I could knock out a few episodes of AFA and then schedule them for release. So ultimately, hopefully we can produce a video for you all every single week. Counter to our long-form reviews where we just discuss about a figure in depth for as long as we need to, these are going to be sub 5 minutes, so they're going to be more easily digestible to those who are maybe new to the hobby or less interested in all those finite details, but hopefully you'll still be able to walk away with a good idea about this figure, and you'll still have a rating associated with it. With that being said, just because I'm trying to make production easier on us, doesn't mean I'm willing to give up quality, which is a source of pride for us on this channel. And for me particularly, I always hold myself to a certain standard anytime I get into any project, whether that's interior design, building custom computers, motorcycles, cars, whatever, you name it. I have a specific standard that I want to produce and show off kind of to the world, and this is no exception. And the results of that are what you see here on screen. Just like our in-depth reviews where I don't see anyone really doing that to the level we're at, I'm hoping this too is a very unique format that you just don't see. And we're still able to provide you a lot of information about the figure that we're reviewing, and still going to give you a rating system. So I hope this is a good first impression of Anime Figure Archive. I hope it's unique. I hope it sticks out to you, right, as something different out there in the world of anime figure reviews. And I hope it has that flair and kind of production quality that you're used to from Kohai's collection. It's probably going to be a little choppier than what you'd expect from a Kohai's collection review, because with those I can add B-roll, I can kind of fade the transitions to make things a lot smoother. Here you're probably going to see harsh cuts of, maybe zooming on the figure or me myself moving right as we pause and record the video. Unfortunately, that's kind of just the nature of the beast, and doing a live production like this, maybe as we get better and more consistent at doing this format, will be smoother overall. FYI, you will see Kohai doing some of these Anime Figure Archive episodes, but expect to see me the majority of the time. This is solely due to Kohai's working schedule where she works night shift and works over 60 hours a week. Whereas I work a normal shift, can come home and knock out an episode. You'll notice that AFA right now is very purple, which is my color that I use for Senpai Showroom. And when Kohai comes on, we will see this transition to that kind of teal color that we use, as well as some minor differences. And now you can finally all see what I built this computer for that I'm sitting at. From here, let me show you around some of the visuals and elements that we've got for Anime Figure Archive. Now this is definitely where I want input from you all, because maybe I'm missing something that you all deem as important and would like to know, particularly about some of these older figures. So long as it is in line, right, with the goals of this, right, keeping it sub 5 minutes, keeping a clean look, and something I can easily produce, we will strongly consider any suggestions that you all have. As already briefly mentioned, in the top left corner, you can see myself or Kohai, along with the figure that we're discussing. And then on the right 2/3, you can see a more close-up image of the figure itself. We can also dynamically switch sources on the fly. So if I need to show you like a prototype image or maybe like an Ami listing of something with a click of the button, I can do so. I can show you artwork this way that maybe it's based on, and if this is a used figure that comes from our collection and I don't have the extra parts on it, I can show you pictures of them. Below me, you can see a description field of the figure, but I've narrowed it down to only 4 things: name, brand, scale, MSRP. So here we can see this is Asuka Shikinami. Sometimes I won't be able to fit the full official name in there, but I'll do my best to say it or show it on like Ami. You can see that I've got the brand, so this is a Max Factory figure, and I've got the scale being 1/6. For MSRP, for figures that are older, such as this one, I've got the original MSRP, so you can see here at 7,429 yen, because that came out in 2011. And then the current market price of about 29,980 yen, which is determined by what Ami is selling for right now. And below, you can see a toned down version of our rating scale that you see from our Kohai's collection videos. Here I've got paint, sculpt, based, artistry, and value, though that'll be subjective value. Because of my Stream Deck here, I can also dynamically put in a rating. So if I go to this figure, decide that it's a 2 on paint with a click of a button, I can show that. And that's the same for sculpt, base, artistry, whatever that might be. So that way on the fly, while I'm talking about this, I can fill that information out for you all. So at a glance, even if you skip ahead to the video, you can get an idea of what this figure might be, right? So a basic opinion on it formulated just from the rating scale itself. And for fun, we do want to be able to give certifications, whether it's like recommended or just silly things. This to me is a Grail, so in my final thoughts, I can definitely give it the Holy Grail certification. Or maybe I find that her best asset here is her peach, and I can give her the Certified Peach 7 days a week certification. But all of that I can, of course, dynamically post here with the Stream Deck, which is super sweet. Other things, visually, you can see the episode count in the top right corner. The goal of this is to encourage others to look at more episodes, because if this is the first time seeing this and you see that we're on episode 21 of AFA, you might be encouraged to go back and look at other episodes. And lastly, in the bottom right corner, you can see our AFA logo branding. Some important concepts to note about this format here. When it comes to a figure that is from our collection, we're pulling it off the shelf as is, as we display it. I'm not going to go under the crawl space of my house, find the box, pull out the additional parts, anything like that, because it's going to take way too long and is really overwhelming. So we're going to pull a figure, off the shelf, present it to you, and if it has additional parts and pieces, that's when I would switch over to, like a web page or something that I can show you those pieces and what it came with. If we happen to have the box on hand, because maybe it's a new figure, I will definitely show that to you. Or something like this where it's a used figure right in our collection, but I happen to have a second one where I do have the box, which you'll see later on in the AFA episode. So there you have it. That's Anime Figure Archive here in a nutshell. Now that you know about our goals, what we're trying to do, and now that you've seen the format, if you have any suggestions that are in line with that we're missing, definitely comment down below, and we'll strongly consider adding that to this format. This will evolve over time, right? We might find things that we need to add a rating for something here and there, or change things, and of course the graphic design where it might change, so it will evolve. But this is a good opportunity to go ahead and add just some blatant feature that we're completely missing right off the bat before we start diving into each episode. If you do leave any form of constructive criticism, greatly appreciate it, and we're glad that you're here with us. With that, let's go ahead and dive into our very first episode of AFA. So let's rewind here and start from the beginning. Hello and welcome to episode 0 of Anime Figure Archive. I'm Senpai, and today we are taking a look at my very first Grail figure ever, and this is Asuka Shikinami from Max Factory. This is from the Evangelion 2.0 rebuild. Now this came out in 2011. It is a 1/6 scale and had an MSRP of 7,429 yen. It currently has a used price of about 29,980 yen, which we can see here on AmiAmi. Interestingly enough, when I bought this back in 2013, I paid 20,000 yen for it. And as a yen value, it has appreciated, but in USD, it's remained about the same. Back in 2013, when I bought this, the dollar to yen ratio was about $1 equals 100 to 105 yen. So I essentially paid $200 for this. With the current yen prices, 30,000 yen is about equivalent to $200. If that price is not appealing to you and you're a DIYer, Plamax is making a model kit version of this figure. I know nothing about it, so feel free to check this out on your own. I can't tell if it's pre-painted or not and how much assembly truly is required. It does say that you should use paints for model kits and of course adhesive for model kits, but this could be right up your alley. This isn't quite the same scale. This is a 1/6 scale and it's about 11 inches tall. This says it's only about 200 millimeters, which is about 8 inches tall. But getting back to the Max Factory version here, let's go ahead and take a look at the paint from afar. Now there is no shading on this whatsoever at all. It's from 2011 and it's good, right? It's not up to today's standard in terms of how much detail they might add, particularly with how much shading they might have. But the gloss areas do look really good, especially in the orange that you can see right here. They did a good job of kind of staying within the lines. I'll show you a close-up of that here in a second. Following the artwork, you'll notice that these lines here, if I catch it in the right angle, you can see are slightly painted a different shade from the red here, but it's really hard to see. The artwork itself, they're the same color, like they're just red. But in the actual movie, they're going to be a light orange. And in this clip here, you can see they are an orange line separate from the red there. But in the figure themselves, that orange doesn't really come through, and on other figures in this plug suit, you will see them as a light orange just to bring out that detail. One thing I really wish that Max Factory did here that they would probably do on a modern figure is doing a dark wash, especially when these don't stand out. There are so many crevices here that could stand out from being outlined or just having that ever little bit of shading. They do some details here in the legs where they are outlined in black, as well as some in this area like for around the little green circles that are there, and those look really good. And if I get closer here, you have a much better view of some of the line work. Overall, it's very clean given that every single one of these yellow spots had to be hand painted, and for the most part they stay within the lines. But some of the outlines here for the green does bleed over to where it's supposed to be black. But you can see this section up looks really good on this figure. Her eye decals are set nicely. Like I said, there's no shading anywhere here, so the hair is all one color, but the modeling gives it that depth. Then they did a decent job of paying attention to her accessories up here, painting the green band, and some of these little black kind of antennae that stick out. As stated a moment ago, the weaker area here is the legs, right? These orange stripes here, if you get them in the right light, you can see them, but I do wish they just went ahead, did a lighter orange so they stood out. And on top of that, just like they did the outlining here on her kneecaps, I really wish they did a dark wash. It's like details here in her belt kind of disappear, get hidden away. I mean, look at that. It just kind of blends in with what you see. And then same when you get down to their feet. All these details would stand out more if they just had a little bit of black outlining them. Looking at the figure from afar again, I do actually think there's just a minor bit of shading at maybe the tip here of her bangs and maybe down here, but none of this is up to modern day kind of qualities when it comes to figures. Most certainly better than a prize figure, but when it comes to an average Max Factory, right, you're going to have shading in the hair, you're going to have shading on the body, so I'll have to give it a 2 out of 5. When it comes to modeling and sculpt of this figure, it's essentially perfect. There's no flashing, there's nothing out of place, and there's so much detail here. You're really just held back by the paint. But all the shadows and such that you see, especially in the hair, that's all from the modeling detail itself. The fact that this came out in 2011 is crazy, and this is what really made me fall in love with Max Factory when I first started collecting, especially since they also did collab with Native. But this is a true testament to Max Factory's quality here, and although it's not overly complicated, right, because there's not too much going on with this figure, I do think it's perfect, so I'll give it a 5 out of 5. The base here is the weakest part of this figure. I do think it looks good though. I like the clear aesthetic better than just like a solid white color, and I do like that they've put the Nerve logo here. I do think that is a good looking touch. The problem with the base is that it can't really support the figure. This figure leans over time. And what will happen is that the peg holding her will break. You can see that I've actually had to put a screw below her to hold her in place. That is also why I've got her sitting on this kind of stand here that's putting it at an angle. You'll notice that even with the base angled this way, she is now standing straight up. That's because of the leaning that happens at this ankle. So as much as I like the look of the base, I can't say it's a good base at all because it can't support the figure straight up enough to prevent her from leaning. Or you might argue that it's the weight of the figure that causes that leaning. Either way, they didn't get those proportions correct. So maybe if they had a hollow peg that kind of went through the base and the base was thicker, maybe they could have prevented that from leaning. So I'm gonna have to give it at least a 2 out of 5. So it gets the 2 primarily just because I enjoy the aesthetic of the base. But as a base, I can't really say it's that good. Now, many people probably do not know that this is actually based on an artwork. Now, this is from more or less the scene where she's changing into this outfit for the first time, but this right here is the source artwork. It was extremely hard for me to find, actually. It took me quite a bit of time to do so. The source artwork does differ from the movie, just what I was talking about, the legs down there. You can see that the artwork has them as red, whereas in the movie they're like a light orange. And Max Factory, I think, has just kind of chosen the in-between state where it's not super effective at being visible, but they didn't want to stray away too much from the artwork. What the artwork definitely has over the main figure, once again, is that outlining. So if Max Factory just came in and did either more outlining work like they did on the kneecaps or did like kind of a dark wash to get within like the belt area, around in the crotch region, especially around her neck, it really would have looked a lot like the artwork. Beyond that, though, I do think it has captured the essence of the artwork, and to me, this is the cutest Asuka figure. I really like this plug suit design. I like this kind of model-esque pose. Like, it's not a natural pose. It's not something you'd see her do in the movie or anything, but it does greatly appeal to me, so I'll give it a 4 out of 5. When it comes to value here, subjectively, when it first came out, 7,000 yen, fantastic value. Still holds up today in terms of the quality, like I said, of the sculpt. The paint's lagging behind, although what is here is clean, so that's nice to see. When you get into the 30,000 yen mark, is it worth that? It really depends if this is a Grail for you or not. This is a Grail of mine for sure, so I am biased in that regard. In terms of 30,000 yen, about 200 USD, I would still be comfortable paying for that. But at least in terms of what you get for 30,000 yen, you can get a lot better figures there. So I think I'm going to have to end up giving it a value just kind of middle of the road at 3. Now, I do have the box for this, and I apologize for not showing you this in the beginning, but I just kind of forgot to. I have a whole nother figure of this, and she looks fantastic in the box because they do a great job of not covering the front, so you can display this well. The reason I have 2 of them is something I explained in our collection video. When I caved and bought this one for 20,000 yen, that was the cheapest price I could find. I was like, well, I'll go ahead and get it from Andarake. It's 20,000 yen. I'll bite the bullet. I want this figure. The day after I bought it, I was out shopping around in Akiba again, and I saw this on the shelf for 6,000 yen. I think an employee had mislabeled it because in the display case, there was a figure listed at 22,000 yen that was basically a step up from like a prize figure. It was not worth 22,000 yen. So I think they mistakenly put a 6,000 yen label on this, so I bought it immediately. So although I paid 20,000 for this, I only paid 26,000 for the 2, got them for 13,000 yen each, so I called that a win. This is one of the few figures I have 2 of, and I've never opened it. It's still completely sealed. And so there you have it. There's a look at Max Factory's 1/6 scale Asuka Shikinami from the Evangelion 2.0 reboot. I do hope you enjoyed seeing this figure that's now, 14 years old somewhere there, which is crazy to me. But this is definitely a certified Grail, in my opinion. It's literally the first figure I ever actively sought for, and I know if you're an Asuka collector that this is going to be up there on your list. So I appreciate you joining me for Anime Figure Archive. If you like this kind of content, please check out our channel where everything is neatly organized and consider subscribing. I'm Senpai. Take care.